I've gone through a program like through AA, and there's a lot of slogans in there. There's a lot of wisdom in those sort of rooms. Isolation is sort of the nature of depression. That's what it wants you to do. It wants you to isolate, and then your inner monologue becomes so toxic. It's like, I don't have this. I'm no good at that. I'm less than, etc., etc. And that inner monologue slowly becomes you.
Hello, I'm Kate and I am the founder and CEO of Push, and welcome to our new series, Safe Spaces, where we ask leaders and other amazing people that we know to let us into their safe space and that's a bit high, wasn't it? And to help us understand how we can all create them a little bit better for both ourselves and for other people around us, in particular those people that we're working with. So my company Push is on a mission to make work better. And we think that a really brilliant place for that to start is by creating more safe spaces. And the safe space is more than just a physical space. It can happen at any time, at any place between people. And it's the kind of place where people can connect. It's the kind of place where people ask questions, ask the right questions, and then feel really comfortable sharing what's going on with them. So without further ado, I would love to welcome you, our wonderful guest, Davinia Taylor, health, beauty, and biohacking expert, and #1 Sunday Times bestseller. That is quite the accolade. Lovely to meet. It's really lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I'm going to start off with a question that I hope will maybe begin our safe space. What's been on your mind recently?
I've got 4 kids, so they're always on my mind.
Wow.
And obviously I'm heading into the perimenopause as well, which I've noticed sort of like I've got underlying ADHD, which obviously girls never got diagnosed with back in the 80s. So it's only when one of my children got diagnosed that I realized that I ticked every box as well. So it's kind of managing that, but it seems to be exacerbated with my cycle, my period. So that's been on my mind. I'm trying to hack into that.
You know what? That's so interesting you say that. We've talked earlier about NA and AA. I've actually given up drinking over the last 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Totally given it up and going completely sober. I don't think I will drink again. I've really realized that certain things within my life, my eating, my drinking, shopping, work, you name it, are certainly not particularly normal. But I actually, in stopping my drinking, I have never been more aware of my cycle as I am now. It's insane.
Yeah, it is. It's fundamental, particularly as you come into sort of our age, that you know exactly where your cycle is and what your symptoms are, because that is dynamite ammunition for your doctor to then put you on HRT, or sort of just so you understand that it is to do with your hormones fluctuating and it's not you per se, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I literally have realized, and we are going wildly off topic here, but I think that this is the essence of safe space, right? But yeah, I really realized that week, you ain't getting anything good out of me. Do you know? Yeah. It's like, just write it off.
We do have peaks in our cycle where productivity skyrockets and would supersede anyone, any bloke, you know. And so like the middle of the cycle, when the estrogen is at its highest, you get much more productive, you won't have cravings, you know, your neurotransmitters are working so much better, but you do need to take the time out to rest, which obviously 21st century and almost feminism has kind of like worked against us, because we didn't know enough about the cycle. When obviously the revolution kicked off, they didn't realize that actually we need to work with cycles. But anyway, we're probably another 100 years off that, being able to sort of like design the workplace around women and menopause and whatever, because we spin so many plates at the same time. I get really bad SAD, you know, seasonal affective disorder. I feel like I'm getting a headache with these clouds, and I open up the curtains and I just look outside and go, oh, drizzle, you know, and you just I just flatline. I flatline with it. And so, I've invested in a little sort of handheld, about £95, red light, infrared light, and it's really good for like your skin anyway, but it's extremely good for eye health and your feel-good hormones. So that's what I'm doing at the moment with
That's
a black
amazing.
coffee while watching the news.
You and I are clearly people that probably are quite comfortable talking about this stuff. You're clearly quite an open person. What's got you there?
I don't know. I've always been a chronic oversharer, and it's got me into a lot of trouble in the past, and I've never learnt my lesson. I don't know. It's just part of my nature to just be very open and try and relate to people and say, oh, is that happening to you? I'm always like seeking, you know, familiarity with people and connection. I've always been like that. I think it's because I was raised as an only child. I always wanted to be connected to someone. I always wanted a sister or something. So I was always boom on my friends and very, very codependent, so to speak, really. So I've always been an open book.
That's so interesting, because I'm an only child as well.
Okay.
I wonder if that's what it is.
Please be my friend. I'm going to tell you everything about me.
But I really love you. Well, can we be friends?
Yeah, please. So bored on my own.
But it's true, isn't it? And I think that there's something in it. Maybe that's what we realize. We do realize that it's that heart of connection. Is there anything that you don't feel particularly comfortable sharing?
Not really, no. Because I mean, what I've been through, obviously when I gave up drinking about 13-14 years ago, you get sort of flung into group meetings, as we were talking about, and that's like you instantly have to sort of start connecting. I've always felt an ease of speaking to people, really. And I think it's because we're all human beings, and I think when you do sort of open yourself up, you generally get the same back. You know, people go, oh my God, I thought I was the only person, you know, I thought I agree with you. I do that. Often when I'm feeling lonely, when I do the pickup and all the mums are outside and, you know, we'll start sort of like chatting, and 9 times out of 10, we've all got the same crap going on back at home. We've all got the curry to tidy up in the morning, and you're not isolated, and you feel it's kind of like you deburden yourself, and it's less poor me.
We've been through so much over the last few years, and you know, not only having gone through that and more and more isolation happening, but then even now we're still kind of encouraging that isolation by the fact that so many more people are working from home rather than wanting to get back into the office. And you said a beautiful sentence. What was it? It was about, you know, how we have that isolation has. We've just gone into our own heads. I often find, and I'm quite lucky because I've gone through a program like through AA, and there's a lot of slogans in there. There's a lot of wisdom in those sort of rooms. Isolation is sort of the nature of depression. That's what it wants you to do. It wants you to isolate, and then your inner monologue becomes so toxic. It's like, I don't have this. I'm no good at that. I'm less than, etc., etc. And that inner monologue slowly becomes you. And unless you kind of get it out, and for somebody to come back and go, actually, no, that's happening to me too. And it's actually normal for somebody age 45 living in the UK for them to be going through that. You don't necessarily have to be seeing psychiatrists or anything. You just need to speak to somebody who is similar to you and just share it. And then the load sort of like magically disappears. You know, the knock-on effects through constant stress and not being able to offload it is phenomenal. And I do believe that's the pandemic we're actually in. We have been working from deep fear for the last 2.5 years. And the only way to, in my opinion, to overcome that is working from a place of love. And the only place to do that is to come back to connection. You know, you look at these trends like quiet quitting, and it's happening because people are really disengaged because they're bloody burnt out. You know, and we've got to get people connecting more. You're a beautiful example of the safe spaces that are created in AA meetings and NA meetings, overeating, whatever. They are connection in their heart, at their heart, right? I mean, well, that is how it works. I mean, that just increases serotonin and your oxytocin, and they're two of the biggest hormones, and the hormones literally rule your being. They're not just there to make you have muscles with testosterone or give you a baby with estrogen or whatever and progesterone. It's not just about that. They actually dictate your cravings, desires, your sleep cycle, your energy, your reaction to things. And by increasing your connection, you will increase oxytocin. So if I go to Sainsbury's or something and I have a 2-minute chat, which I generally do more now, I live in Lancashire than when I did in London. So if I have a 2-minute chat at the till about how ridiculous the weather is, you do actually feel a little bit of connection. And it's about nothing. It's about the bloody weather. But the person who you're chatting to and the feedback is monumental in boosting your mood on a subconscious level.
So just doing that effort, you will feel the benefit in your body, whether you like it or not, whether you can't be asked to do the conversation or not. Your body keeps score of that positive interaction, even if it's a bit of effort.
It's a micro connection, right? These micro connections all build up. They genuinely change, exactly as you said. They just release those little bits. But it's just being a bit more present, isn't it? It's like, hello, how are you? How's your day? You know, it's those different things. You've obviously had a lot of experiences of safe spaces, like talking. How has sharing and talking changed your life? Would you say that some of the biggest areas have been within those AA groups, or is there other things that really spring to mind?
All the time. I mean, not necessarily there. It's just like I try and answer as many DMs as I can on my Instagram.
Do you?
There's a lot of sort of connection there, because people often DM me with something a little bit more sensitive, like they can't give up drinking, they're overweight, they think their husband doesn't like them anymore. All these sort of like, they feel like they want to share it with me, probably because I shared everything with them.
Right?
Exactly. So that's the trade-off. And if I help them, I get that inner glow. So it's not that, and they say, oh, I'm so sorry to bother you. You're probably never going to read this. Don't worry, you're not bothering me. You're actually helping me get out of my head to help you. You know what I mean? So there's a transaction there. So it's not just it's not just the person who's sharing, it's the recipient as well, who there's a whole transaction there. There's a currency that takes place when someone helps someone else. And it's normally the person who's helping actually feels better than the person receiving the help or the advice.
I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. That connection is so powerful for both parties, but actually being able to give in that way and to hold that space for someone is one of the best things that you can do to change how you're feeling. Is there one thing that you think has been most responsible for improving how you feel on a day-to-day basis? Would it be things like connection, or would it be something more specific in terms of like your self-care, do you think?
Okay, so there's a couple of things actually. I find running for me really helps me get into a meditative state, and almost it gives me ideas, because running, not sprinting or anything, just plodding the streets, because I'm pretty fit anyway, it's no real effort for me. So because it used to be a huge effort, I used to be the person who parked right next to the supermarket as close as possible because I hated walking. But now I actually run because I've found it boosts my dopamine, because I've got ADHD, which means I've got very low dopamine, so I seek it. So that what the dopamine does for me, it boosts my creativity, my confidence, my energy, my get up and go, literally it's like just taking a pill of, almost like taking a glass of wine for me. So that's what that is. So if I do that in the morning, I'm set up for the rest of the day. Also, cold exposure is another really good one for boosting dopamine. So after my run, I'll have a shower, and then I'll just flick it on cold for about, 30 seconds. And that dopamine increase will last for about 6 hours, takes it up by 250%. Whereas if you say had a glass of wine or something, it would boost it by about 500%, but it would drop down within 15 minutes and it would go below your baseline, your dopamine baseline. So you then feel depressed and then you get a craving. Same with chocolate, same with any sort of like sugar that will boost your dopamine, but the come down is ferocious. And then that's why you get a craving 20 minutes later, once you've had a sandwich, because your dopamine's dropped. So that's why you're looking for a Kit Kat, and that's why you're looking. So it's a knock-on effect. So I need to boost my dopamine that will sustain me through the day, so I don't go seeking stuff that's going to lower my baseline and then trigger me into a dis-ease with myself. So I'll start looking outside myself for something to stimulate me. So for me, running in a bit of cold exposure is great. I've got this little infrared sauna pod thing that I got in lockdown that has been amazing for me, because a lot of your sort of neurotransmitters can get congested when your liver is full of toxins. So obviously, we are bombarded with toxins, and I've got quite a sluggish detox system anyway, genetically, which I think probably about 50% of the population have. So sitting in an infrared sauna for me at night is a really good way to get that light into the liver and then sweat it out. And it just really helps my detox system, so my neurotransmitters don't get sort of fuzzy or lackluster because my liver's doing so much work, so it's really interesting how you can hack into your brain by just literally doing tiny little tweaks in the day. And you know, if you do if you can't do any of that, like I alluded to before with the red light, is a great way to just boost, without having to move, to just boost those neurotransmitters to put you in a more of a summery mood.
Davinia, can I ask you one more, another thing? Like, you clearly have a level of confidence when it comes to that vulnerability. Would you have any particular tips for someone who maybe doesn't feel quite like that?
Yeah.
You know, like,
write it down. You don't have to necessarily
Brilliant.
share it, but share it with your book. And if you feel paranoid that someone's going to read it, just burn it, dispel it. You know, journaling's really good. But, you know, if it is something really dark and something you don't want anyone to read, you've got to burn it, because otherwise you'll probably get paranoid about that lying around. So yeah, write it down. And often, talking about neuroplasticity, is doing like a gratitude list, 10 things a night and 10 resentments. It's an old sort of AA trick, but it really sticks with you. And again, just do it for a week, chuck it in the bin. Keep doing that. Just vomit it onto a page and get rid of it, and then just see how you feel about it. And
so true.
And it's free. You know, it's a free form of counseling, and it can literally take minutes to do, and it will just reset the brain, because the brain it's plastic. You know, you can rewire your behaviors and your thinking and your inner monologue.
Do you know, that for me was one of the greatest gifts when many moons ago, when I realized that my thinking wasn't actually me, and actually getting it out of here and onto paper. Like every morning I will freeform write, because I've just got to get it out of here, because otherwise it just goes round and round and round, and I have to get it out. And it's a vulnerability, right? It's an openness and a vulnerability, and I become more confident within me as well. And I think that, you know, actually it's very interesting, you know, since giving up drinking, I think one of the problems that we have, I think the irony is that we are such cognitive creatures, and we are so up here most of the time, rather than being conscious of how we're feeling. And that is one of the things that I do want this program to do as well, and this work to do as well, is to help people understand how they're feeling a bit more, share how they're feeling a bit more, because in doing so, that's going to change how they're feeling, right? And that's going to help them feel more well. And
I also think that, you know, it's quite nice to do a little bit of a mood diary. I recommended it in my book, actually, my first book, It's Not a Diet, to just for a week keep a mood diary. When you have a snack throughout the day, 20 minutes later, how do you feel? Are you bloated? Are you tired? Has the brain fog kicked in? And start looking at what's triggering that, because you might start the day really well. Then you have a bowl of granola. 20 minutes later, you're like, tired now. Well, yeah, of course, because you're in a carb coma. Your body has just produced, the carbohydrates have turned to serotonin, which is then turning into melatonin, which is your sleep hormone, at 11 o'clock in the morning. Of course, you're going to be tired. You're going to have 10 coffees to liven up again. And it's like the whole rhetoric about how we eat is completely wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just about slowing it down and becoming much more conscious of what is happening. And then that's when you can be a bit more you, right? That's when you can, rather than just constantly being on this treadmill of stuff, and just slowing it down and just getting back to you a little bit more, so that
you really need to take out the ingredients that are causing that treadmill. I need something else. I need to go Pret a Manger, or I need to go out for lunch. I need to do, and it's constantly jumping from it's totally distracting. It's too much. It's totally distracting, because you're constantly on the what's next sort of trip, you know.
And that can be any ingredients, right, within the world, not just food,
any ingredients,
right?
Whatever's boosting your dopamine. It brings me back to that. Everyone getting below their natural baseline of dopamine.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. And it's, you know, it's highly addictive behavior. I do believe that the world is in a state of chronic addiction to something.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really couldn't.
And that's why we're constantly, give me this, whether it's likes on Instagram, whether it's sugar in a fizzy drink. Look at the majority of the population. Chronic disease, chronic stress, exhaustion, burnout. Someone's got to give.
I honestly, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. You have been nothing short of a total joy. What a way to end the week. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I hope it helps.